Oh, it didn't. Sorry. Excuse my cursing. I thought it cut me off. Or maybe it did. Maybe it did. I said the S word when it cut me off, but it looks like it did. I'm picking up where I left off. If the Portland Trailblazers, as we were talking about in the last video, load up on too many non-shooters, defensive non-shooters, they could regret it, man. It's not the greatest way to build in the modern NBA. I'm not saying you load up on three-point shooters and leave everything else to the dust, but you definitely don't load up on non-three-point shooters, defensive guys that don't necessarily find themselves durable enough to play a good portion of the time. And so that's what I see in Portland. Just too much of the same thing. And while I like what they have, they need to shave off some of that and get a little more balance as it pertains to what they have, so that they can find what they need to be the contender that they're ultimately hoping to become as they shift away from the win later timeline, win now timeline, or win later timeline with the young players that they hope to have help them win sooner than maybe one would expect. And you pick up a Donovan Clingan, even though he's a rookie, I would expect that you would want to win with him. Jeremy Grant, you want to win. Anthony Simons, you want to win. Thibel's been in the league now. Guys are in that timeline of everything but rebuild is basically what I'm saying to you. They're not in a rebuilding timeline. And so, objectively speaking, I just don't think the Portland Trailblazers are in the most advantageous position with those assets to find what they're looking for. It's almost like the Lakers in a way, where we have too many one-way players, too many pieces that don't necessarily fit. Timeline doesn't necessarily align with the core. The rest of the players, that is, a bunch of young guys, and you got the core, of course, LeBron and AD. I see a dynamic that reminds me of that in Portland, to where you got Scoot, you got rookie Clingan, but I think he's a win-now player, as I said, but he's a rookie. You got Rafe, you got Walker, you got Murray, as we mentioned last year, Chris Murray's brother, in the last video, rather. You picked him up last year. Those are win-later players, but a lot of what you have in players that you're paying, they need to be winning now. So it would be best to try to pick a timeline and stick to it. And then picking a timeline that is win now, if you choose to, try your very best to do whatever you can do to get the players that actually can be good enough to win games in this season. Because right now, if they wanted to shift toward winning, I don't know that they're capable of doing it. You know, of course, we got to mention DeAndre Ayton as well in that win now timeline. It's just, they're paying too much to win so little. They don't have enough great rebuilding talent to have the excuse of calling themselves a rebuilding team right now. Still got to win the lottery a couple times to really be that kind of team. Denny Advija, as we mentioned in the last video, these are win now pieces. These guys don't want to wait. They've already developed. They're ready to start this process of being contributors to a playoff situation. Now, maybe you argue Clingan and the addition of Advija may be able to boost their overall talent level and maybe put 5 or 6 wins on their situation. Maybe they can be a play-in tournament team. It's hard to shift into seeing a team like that becoming a play-in tournament team without actually seeing it, so to speak. It's hard to see it in my mind's eye. Though I can argue they picked up some winning type players in Advija and Clingan that should, in theory, do that very thing. But in a difficult West, is that enough to really make yourself a viable top 12 team? Like I said, I don't see it. I don't see it. There are too many other teams in the league that got either better than they were or still hover above what you expect from Portland to expect that the Portland Trailblazers have a legitimate chance of making the playoffs or the play-in tournament at this point. You just don't see it. Especially since the last we saw of Scoot Henderson wasn't very impressive. And so that's my concern overall with the Portland Trailblazers. Their timelines don't make any sense. They're forking out way too much money to the contracts they have. And their GM seems to me, he wants to continue to target defensive players that can't score, that aren't exactly durable. You talk about having interest in Vanderbilt, but what they have, that is insane. It's absolutely stupid. It's not stupid if those players are healthy, because you could put together, in theory, the best defense ever known to man with Robert Williams, Clingan, and Grant and Vanderbilt. I mean, if you just love defensive players and you think you can make it work somehow, you definitely love those pieces, but I don't see what you see there, especially in the modern NBA. Now, if you were going up against a 1994 Knicks or something like that, where the score is only 79-62, then yeah, that Portland Trailblazer team with Vanderbilt and Robert Williams, if they're all healthy, hell yeah, that's crazy great. You can win that game. You can win that series. But outside of that, I don't see where the success will come from. So to me, just in looking what their GM is targeting is a red flag for me. When you're starting the process of trying to figure out who you want to be, the stuff that it sounds like he's interested in is definitely stuff that should not be asked to play with one another. You do not need Thibault, Vanderbilt, Robert Williams all on one team. Absolutely not. Hell no. In the modern NBA, absolutely not. Because you're not going to ever get a bucket. And then you're asking Scoot Henderson to perform a lot better than he was able to prove. You obviously got to move a couple pieces in order to make something like that happen. I don't know what the direction the Portland Trailblazers is right now, man. For Portland fans, the tea leaves are showing me that you're trying to build something that's defensive minded and probably going to have a lot of injury issues if what is being rumored actually comes to pass. They should have zero interest in Vanderbilt. Zero. Unless they plan on getting rid of all of those other guys that have that problem. And in getting rid of that problem, why in the hell would you try to re-inherit that problem with a player that has those same problems? If I'm getting rid of an issue, why the hell am I trying to replace it with the same issue? Either way, it doesn't make any sense. They should have no interest in Jared Vanderbilt. I'm just being honest with you. No interest in Jared Vanderbilt. They should have interest in players like Kevin Huerter, shooters. KCP obviously went to Orlando. That's the type of stuff that Portland could use. DeJounte Murray, before he went to the Pelicans, I would imagine that would be a player they would be interested in. That type of stuff. Not necessarily what I'm seeing that they are actually interested in. It just looked like they're heading in the wrong direction. And I'm not really sure if I trust, if I'm a Portland Trailblazer fan, what I'm seeing there. No, I don't think I can't for certain say that they're not dreaming up building something that ain't good enough, if I'm just being completely honest with you. And maybe that's unfair, because you can't just single out a piece and say you know what they're doing. Not necessarily, but that's what I'm attempting to do, so bear with me. But yeah, that I don't know, man. If I'm Portland, I'm kind of in a no man's land, and if I do the wrong things, I could be in a bad winning situation, to where your team's not good enough to win, but you're trying to demand they do it anyway. In my humble opinion, I think certain mistakes that they made were foreseeably mistakes. Giving Jeremy Grant that contract, whether they plan on keeping Dame Lillard or not, didn't seem like a good contract to begin with. And he wasn't a great enough player, in my opinion, to be that kind of running mate for Dame. Now, I give a pass to smaller market teams who have a hard time getting really anybody. So maybe that's kind of the idea, is to get a guy to commit to Portland for any length of time. You got to overpay for him. I get that. But if the object of the game is to be good enough to win, and you're giving out 5-year contracts to guys who can't necessarily get you over the hump, and you don't really have the pieces and the assets to really make big moves for whatever reason, it's bad. You look at the trade that they made for Dame in and of itself. Drew Holiday was a hell of a piece. I would have kept him. I don't think that was a great trade for Dame. But Drew Holiday, if they were talking about trading a point guard, it shouldn't have been him that moved, if you ask me, especially if they were just going to shift into a win now timeline. They could have paid him the same contract that Boston gave him. He would have signed it, I'm sure. I'm sure he would have signed it. And like I said, Scoot Henderson has to prove himself. I don't know that Scoot Henderson's that guy. And if he happens to end up being that guy, well, Drew Holiday can play the two. So I don't know. And then to turn around and trade Drew Holiday for 2 injury-prone guys, and Grant Williams, who if anybody listened to anybody from Boston would have told you they love him but couldn't stay healthy for longer than 10 games a season, quite literally. And for Malcolm Brogdon, who's been injury prone since he won the Rookie of the Year, I mean, come on, man. What were they thinking? That was not the value of Drew Holiday at all. Drew Holiday's worth so much more than that in the NBA. So I just, at that point, I start looking at the Portland Trail Blazers. I honestly just say, man, their vision is off. It can have a hard market to attract players. That's fine. But your vision for what you're trying to build and the overall imprint of what you're hoping to become, in my humble opinion, it can't look like this. It can't be you trading away stars for injury-prone guys that underperform in terms of their health and then slapping them next to more of those same type of pieces. DeAndre Ayton, what are you doing with him? You know what I'm saying? Because he got this big old contract, and then you drafted Klingon, who you know you want to have as your starting center, who you're probably going to find out you're a better team if Ayton's on the bench and Klingon's on the floor. And it's like, are you going to trade Ayton? You know what I'm saying? Because he does have some value in this league, but his contract's so trash that you're not going to get the greatest asset for him. I like the Advija acquisition, but should they have gone Klingon in the draft? With Ayton being there on that big contract, it's hard to move. Could they have not gone in a different direction with that pick and maybe help themselves to a different type of asset? Or maybe trade Klingon to somebody who was desperate for him, since it was an entire league full of teams that really wanted him? Probably more so than they did, with intentions of helping him to a win-now situation sooner than Portland would be able to. And they could have took the plunder from that trade and then divvied it out to make more sense for their roster. Like I said, man, I'm in love with defense to a degree as well. I like defense. But unless you plan on winning games where you're scoring only 80 points a game, it doesn't do me no good to have guys that like that up and down the damn roster with no shooting, man. No shooting? So, you know, Anthony Simon's going to be the only one launching threes every night. That's not what Portland needs, man. That's not the direction they should be going in. So I just think their vision is off. How they handled the Dame situation, when Dame essentially said after he couldn't get to Miami that he wanted to come back, and then they said, "No, we closed the door behind you. You said you want out, you stay out," and then proceed to trade him for really nothing that's substantial that is on the roster today. I don't even remember what type of picks they got from Milwaukee, but in theory, if you're trading for Milwaukee's picks, if they're not someone else's from Milwaukee, and they belong to Milwaukee, they're probably not great picks since they got Giannis and literally Dame. So you don't expect them to be giving you the first overall pick in any of those. So it's like, Portland's vision has been bad. It seems like they were moving in ego when it came to Dame. And that was stupid. That was your Pantheon great, top 75 player. You sent him to a contender for a future Hall of Fame point guard in Drew Holiday, and then trade that Hall of Fame point guard for two injury-prone dudes that were overpriced tagged. Just like, if I can be completely honest with you, I think it's time to move on from that GM over there. Whoever that GM is, if he's not taking direct orders from the owner who's putting forth this vision, if this is his vision, he got to go. I don't know who that is. It could be anybody. Because I'm not aware of what's going on in Portland and who that brain trust is and how it works. But I'm telling you, from the tea leaves that I'm reading, the vision is not very good. And you like the Klingon acquisition or drafting, you like the Denny Advija addition. But them putting so much of a price tag on some of these contracts that they don't want to move for anything less than 2 picks, and Jeremy Grant should be a player that you're very happy to get rid of without picks coming back your way. Because his contract is a blood stain on your situation, whether you want to admit it or not. It's a blood stain. And while there has been some word that he may not want to leave Portland, which is different, I'm not going to lie, I know of some people from Portland, so I'm not going to crap on Portland, but that's just a strange situation, especially when there was rumors when he signed with Detroit saying he wanted to play for a black city of predominantly black people. I don't know what the hell he's doing. I don't know what Jeremy Grant's doing. But if he's happy in Portland, I'm not going to crap on that. I'm just going to say that being happy in a situation where you can't win as a basketball player seems a little different. You know, it's a little different. But it is what it is, man. So just with all of this stuff just pointed in the direction that it is, I just am not sure that I see any real championship upside to what it is that I'm hearing from the vision that is being described in regards to what Portland's trying to do and what they ultimately have. I just don't see no way that they're pleased with what ultimately they're putting together. So, you know, how does that equate to Scoot Henderson developing properly is a question I also have. You know, are we trusting that Scoot's ever going to become that guy that he was ultimately drafted to be in this situation where nobody around him can shoot? But his undersized two-guard running mate that doesn't play any defense, and then Anthony Simons, and then the one-way defensive players that they keep slapping next to him, and Jeremy Grant on a contract that makes it very difficult to put stuff around it. This is not a good vision, man. Not a good vision. It's likely going to be a losing season, and they're paying too much for that. They're paying too much for that. So what I think needs to happen, besides just the overall idea that they need to move on from that GM who put all this crap together, is that they need to come off the price tag for some of the stuff that they have. It should not cost 2 picks to get Jeremy Grant's contract off of you. At all. At all. Because you're not going to move it. You're not serious about moving if that's what the price tag is. Ayton needs to be moved. He needs to be moved. And you need to commit to a timeline, quite honestly. You need to commit to a damn timeline, man. And so that's my whole point of Portland. I'm not mad at them keeping Anthony Simons in theory, but they keep on bringing in guards, and he can run the point guard position. Maybe not defensively, but like keep slapping guards on top of him. It's just a weird vision that they have for their team, and it's not good enough. And it's not going to become good enough if they just add a few pieces to it. If they want to go all in and make some massive trade to get some super player, that could change a lot. But I don't anticipate them doing anything like that. You know, maybe going after like a Jimmy Butler or something might change their fortune. But even that, it's just coming out of my head. That's nothing I've heard rumored at all, and it wouldn't help their shooting either. So, but that's the type of move that you can say, okay, well now they can make a playoffs now. Until they make some type of move like that, I don't see nothing like that coming. I really don't. This is going to be a bad, mediocre future for the Portland Trail Blazers, just like it's a bad, mediocre past for the most part. And that Dame situation, you know, I respect Dame. I really do. He's a hell of a player. But sometimes you just got to respect that a guy is committed to the money, man. He ain't really committed to winning basketball. He ain't really committed to anything other than the cash flow. And that's his business. But when you're the organization, you got to guard against that by not giving him some overpriced tag when you have a small market and you can't attract the type of talent that would otherwise make it so that he could become a winner. Whether he wants to be a winner or not, you're paying too much for one player that's going to keep on putting you in a position to continue to lose. And you end up trading him away to another contender, but now his contract's not giving you that return because it's so expensive when you trade for it. It ain't the move, man. So that's what I'm telling y'all, man. At some point in time, we got to start respecting the fact that money is important, yes. But in the presence of the NBA, when you have a salary cap, ain't no way you're going to give one guy who only plays one side of the floor all the cap and then have a small market to where you can't attract no superstar players to come with him, can't get the two-way players for whatever reason. You're not tanking at all because of his presence. You just leave yourself in no man's land. And it's all in the name of being afraid of being able to keep or lose rather that player. All that they did for Dame, and it left them nowhere. They ain't win nothing. And I get it. If anybody gets the Portland Trail Blazers situation, we talked about it. They were in a situation where they were well above the luxury tax. They were not in a position to be able to make some of the transactions that maybe some of their other teams were able to. But once that shifted, they immediately started giving money to people they had no business giving money to. When they got themselves out of that situation, they immediately signed people to bad contracts. Like, they ain't learned nothing, did you? So that's what I have to say about the Portland Trail Blazers, man. I'm not a fan, not by any stretch of the imagination. I know some people who are, though. I'm not in touch with those folks no more, but at one point I knew a girl who actually was a dancer for the Portland Trailblazers team. So like, there's some ties to Portland from myself, but I don't have a dog in the race. In fact, they were one of my teams I grew up disliking a lot as a Lakers fan. So I don't care to see them succeed. But in a Western Conference like this, you can't afford to have a bad vision, you know, where it looks like you're about to do stuff that doesn't work before it even happened. You got to make sure that the person who's triggering your rebuild or triggering your shifting out of your timeline is putting together stuff that can compete with the field or redefine the field entirely. And if you put together some defensive team full of fragile players and underdeveloped guys that, you know, you're not developing properly, whatever the case may be, in this Western Conference, you're going to be as bad as you are right now when you're trying to tank. Simple. So that's pretty much my point of view, man. I'm going to drink some water, maybe make another video because it's getting hotter and hotter out here right now. But I wanted everybody to know my point of view on the Portland Trailblazers. I'm crapping all over the vision, man. I don't like it. I don't give teams excuses like maybe others will for being in a small market. And, you know, it's hard to win a championship. Sometimes people make it hard on themselves by the stuff that they allow to take place in their organizations. Don't let people do stupid stuff and have bad visions and all types of stuff. No, man. You don't have to do that. BDL 44, I thank you all for watching.